Welcome to part 4 of our pivot table tutorial. In the last tutorial, we were able to create a pivot table that showed average earnings by degree earned. We had done some grouping here to convert years of education into these groups with labels. And we still have these slicers that allow you to kind of see different combinations of results. But suppose we wanted to see the data from a little bit different perspective. Let's say we wanted to see gender in the row over here to see male versus female, and then maybe also keep race as a slicer, but then have this degree earned as a slicer rather than a primary row. And so you can easily allow your user to see the data from the same kind of result, but from a different perspective that might show the results in a way that they may want to see it more easily. So a quick way to do that is simply to make a copy of this spreadsheet. So I'm going to go down to the spreadsheet name, and I'm going to right click where it says earnings by degree, and I'm going to go to the option that says move or copy. And then here at the bottom, I want to check the box that says create a copy to make a duplicate of this spreadsheet. So now to the far left, the active worksheet now becomes this earnings by degree 2. I'm going to change the sheet name to earnings by gender. And notice that in a prior video, I had hid the field list, the pivot table settings. So over here in the pivot table, one thing I could do is right click, and down at the bottom it shows show field lists. So if I click that, I get my my 4 quadrants and my list of fields back. So what I want to do here is I want to remove the education from the row. When you do grouping, it adds a second field name, but I'm going to just drag those out of the list, and I'm going to put gender in my row. So now it shows female versus male earnings. But in order to clean this up, there's not a whole lot of work we need to do, but now we have gender as a slicer, and that's a little bit redundant because you can already see the 2 different gender options. So I'm going to click on this slicer and hit the delete key on my keyboard to remove it. Now maybe we want to see the years of education, the degrees earned, as a slicer. So I'm going to go back to insert and add a slicer for the second years of education. And here we have our different degrees earned. I'm going to move that over and resize it so it's not in the way. May want to move these things up a little bit so that everything shows. Okay, so you can see the people with females with bachelor's degrees. You can see white versus females versus white males. Kind of the same thing that we had in the previous spreadsheet. And notice that the chart has also updated for us, but we have some labels that we need to clean up. So the heading here still says degree earned, and the chart title also says average earnings by degree earned. So those are no longer appropriate. So we simply have to type on top of them. So I'm going to change degree earned to gender. The average earnings is still a perfectly good heading for that. And I'm just going to change this to average earnings by gender. I had already updated the sheet name, so we should be good to go. So suppose I wanted to do the same thing but have race in the row. I could quickly do just what I did before. I could right click and select move or copy from the sheet name and create a copy. I get this error message. It doesn't like you to have too many worksheets that draw from the same table. Don't worry about that. I'm going to change the name of this sheet here to earnings by race. And again, I'm going to show my field list. And now I'm going to move gender out of the row, and I'm going to move race in the row. Now you could add things to columns and filters as well. I like to keep mine fairly simple. Notice if you were to add gender and race, you can't see the whole table here. But with only four different entries in one and two in the other, it's not unreasonable to have both in the same chart and table. But I kind of like to leave them clean with just one thing in the row and then leave the column blank and then offer the other entries as slicers. Now we already have race in the row, so we no longer need it as a slicer. So I'm going to delete that slicer and I'm going to insert gender back as an option. And I'll resize it so it doesn't take up too much space. So now we have our earnings by race, and all we really need to do to clean this up is to update a couple headings. So I'm going to change gender to race and change the chart heading to average earnings by race, and we're done. So you can see we took kind of a long data set that would be really hard to analyze by just scrolling through it, even if you did averages or sums or sorting and subtitles or subtotals and things within the raw data. It wouldn't be as easy to understand as what we've created here. So we have earnings by degree, and you're allowing, you're showing the summary results in this worksheet so the user is able to see the results, but they're also allowed to click on the slicers, and you've shown them 3 different ways to view their data: by race, by gender, and by degree, and allowing them to see any sort of combination that they want.